They're gone, yeah. Who else is gone? You're gone? Oh, sorry. So we are recording this. So exciting. All right. Okay, next week I'm going to be gone. And during that week, we'll have a few things you're going to have to do. So I want a full, detailed report of what you do every day. Right? And I want it, and I want a nice, maybe make a poster board of your daily activities while I'm gone. So it's on Miss Olive. Yes? The only class that matters. Which, of course, is this class, right? Now, I know you might think that in another class, you'll say something else, but I know you're lying. Because this is the only class that matters. Right? There you go. Even if you don't believe it, you gotta learn how to say that. So I'm going to be gone. We're going to watch a couple videos while I'm gone. My son, Mr. Sims, is going to, he will teach a little bit because there's certain things we kind of talked about that he really would like to, he could teach and talk for a long time. He's a very good teacher. And then you're going to have to write an essay. You'll be in class. And an essay, it's not a heck of a lot different than what we've been doing in class for short IDs. It's going to be either a 4 or 5 paragraph essay. The 2 body paragraphs will be very similar to a short ID. Just got to add a few more examples. It's basically the same thing. And we'll have an in-class time for this one. I will tell you or I'll give you the question before. He will do it before, and I believe it's going to be next Thursday. And so we are going to do that in class. So we're going to do kind of finish up Luther and Calvin. And at the end of the class, if everything goes right, we'll talk a little bit about a thesis statement. I know most of you have probably done a lot of thesis statements. There's certain things you have to do for my class, and of course, going to be slightly different. But thesis statement is incredibly important. And on the AP exam, the College Board gives what's called a rubric. Don't you hate that word? It just drives me crazy. I call it the guidelines, and that's what I'll call from now on. But they really weigh thesis statements heavily. In fact, a good thesis statement is about a 30-year grade. I think they might weigh it too much almost, but a thesis statement is really important. And so throughout the year, I will give you, from now on, starting, well, either today or tomorrow, and then once a week, we'll do just a thesis statement. That 30-year grade is kind of big on the essay. On the AP exam, you have 2 full essays. And one just a regular essay. One, we add some documents and go from there. That's why we work so much on that HAP stuff on purpose, because that helps you with the, it's called the document-based question. They now call the other essay a long essay. Why not? Used to be called a free response question. I don't get that either. So we'll have an essay and a prompt. They're very broad. That's really good. And so what we just need to worry about is write what you know. And so let's go take your notes out. Let's go and finish up this. And something happened to the Power School. Something has happened to it. And so it's freezing the computers all over the school. That's the problem you have. You spend that much money and so reliant on one program. If it freezes everything. And so I'm hoping, Tracy, that's the reason why that grade didn't come through. It wasn't because of fault in the program, now it's not reading it. You'll see. But I did put all the grades in yesterday, and so you can check. And one thing about the grades, if I make a mistake typing in a number, which I can do, it's not on purpose, please let me know and I'll change it. Because it's easy, at least it's easy for me to miss, because if I try to proofread on a computer screen, it's really hard for me. It just all kind of glares back, and I know what I meant to type. And so, but just check if you do that, or if I make a mistake on that, it's not a big deal. All right, so just to review, do you remember how Vienna was besieged? Vienna was besieged. You remember those heady days of yesterday when Vienna was besieged? Remember that? Wow. First off, what pastry came out of that? Croissants. We have croissant day now every Friday. And just to ask, who besieged Vienna? Suleiman of what empire? The mighty Ottoman Empire. Just to review, now the Ottoman Empire was pushing into Vienna. Also, who tried to go around Africa to avoid the Ottomans as the middleman for the big trade with China? Yeah, Prince Henry of what country? Portugal. And that also led to Spain going west to try to get east. And who was the valet king who was fighting Charles? AKA Big Nose, yeah. Had a huge nose, yes. And Charles V was emperor of the Habsburgs. And just go back to Luther. Luther believed that good works alone would not get you into heaven. What did you need? Yeah, faith. Faith would get you into it. And what was triggered partially by Luther's writings, that people have personal responsibility over their salvation. And remember that horrific peasant rebellion. And what did Luther say about the revolt when it actually started? At first he was kind of sympathetic. Hey, this is my revolt. Then, yeah, thugs, barbarians, they must accept authority. And last one, where was Luther excommunicated? Or, I'm sorry, branded a heretic and had to be saved by the Grand Elector Frederick. Worms, yes. All right, so we're right here at the Siege of Vienna. Vienna's being besieged. It would be broken. They'd come back again. But this actually, in a way, it was almost imperceptible, but it would begin the long decline of the Ottomans. We'll do a little bit more of the Ottomans later on, because the Ottomans are going to be a European empire, too. They would have a huge presence in Europe till 1912. And eventually Turkey would come out of the ruins of the Ottoman Empire, World War I, and Turkey still is in Europe. Just a tiny little part of Europe now, but they're still in Europe. The capital is in Europe. And so, in the Holy Roman Empire, there have been a series of fighting, conflicts between the various princes over religion. And remember, Charles was what city did Charles sack? Yeah. Basically, to force the Pope to do what he wanted. And there's something called the Schmalkaldic League. I'm sorry, Schmalkaldic League. And this was a league of Protestant-leaning princes. Now remember, yes, they talk religion. Yes, they said that we believe that we should decide our own fate and faith. But what was the real reason they were fighting this war? Power, which is money, and the power to tax, and all of that. Well, this Schmalkaldic League would eventually fight a war with allies of Charles called, there's actually 3 of the wars before this, but we're just going to give you one, the War of the Schmalkaldic League. And the reason this war finally happened is because Charles made peace with the French, he made peace with the Turks. And when he did that, now he's going to get rid of those Protestants. But by waiting so long and even allying with the Protestant princes during the War of the Peasant Rebellion, I meant to say Peasant Rebellion. By doing this, they were stronger. This was a bloody 9-year war. Now, do not think in terms of wars of the 20th century, World War II, and a fight to the finish. It was more complex than that. They basically only fought in the spring and summer. Now that they're using gunpowder, the powder gets wet, it's worthless, so it's almost impossible to fight. The big thing the wars happened were marauding armies, almost mercenaries. that would rape, pillage, and steal for their food and supplies. And so these kind of wars were incredibly hard on the population. And off and on, it's going to go for 100 years. But the 30 Years' War would be the biggie. And this shows the different, excuse me, religions. Here we have the Muslim influence coming in because the Ottomans, and the Ottomans are moving into here. The blue areas, for the most part, or I'm sorry, is that more purple? Roman Catholic. Now, they're starting to call themselves, we're the church. We're Catholic, the all-encompassing church. And then Lutheran areas, because that's where Luther was. And then you get some other areas where you have Orthodox, which are slowly going away, and a few more Calvinists and those who follow the Zwingli. And so the thing, I put this map up there, is it's now becoming a hodgepodge. And that's Charles V on his throne. And you notice he's holding an orb. That orb right there represents the world, aka New Spain. Well, this did not go well for Charles. He had been fighting almost constantly for 30 years. The entire time he had been emperor, it's constant war. Yeah, they're bringing in more money than ever before. Yes, this triggered inflation and a commercial revolution, but what happened was this. He went into a great amount of debt. Charles went into huge, unprecedented debt, and that would greatly hamper his war effort. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait a second, how could you go into debt if you're bringing all this money in? Actually, that makes it easier. If all of a sudden gold and silver started coming in from the Aztec Empire, from the Incas, and what's that city that's virtually has a hill made of silver? The richest hill in the world. It's in Peru. Hundreds of thousands of American Indians would die digging that silver out. You remember that? Still a rich hill. Now it's basically the city now, as I understand it, is a huge toxic waste dump. Yeah. Yeah, toxic, yeah. And all that in. No, wait, how could you bring all this money in? Excuse me. And be broke? Well, part of it was the money, the gold and silver that was supposed to be going to the king, they were just keeping it. And they were going going west and trading with China, trading for themselves. They wanted all this stuff from China, and all the gold and silver was going there. But here's the deal. Once people believe they have a flow of money coming in, what do they always, and this isn't always, think is going to happen? The money's flowing in. They got all this gold and silver. And what do they think tomorrow? What's going to be like tomorrow? They always believe this. What's that? They're going to be rich. Today, tomorrow, they'll be rich. And what's going to happen to the flow of gold and silver tomorrow? Today it's coming in. Tomorrow? It'll be coming in. Next week, be coming in. Next week, coming in. Everybody believes, every single time, that the prosperity is going to go on forever. Now, we should know that doesn't happen. It ends. It dries up. But no, everybody acts. And this is what I want you to get. Charles acted like everybody has always acted in history. The prosperity, the boom will go on forever. And they always think that. Always. We're going to get rich, and we're going to continue to be rich. The prosperity will go on forever. We found a new way to virtually mint wealth. They always, always, always think that. It's a delusion. It becomes kind of a euphoria. We'll be rich forever. In your lifetime, you saw it. You might have been, well, you were very young, but it happened. It was huge. They thought that basically just a printing press was given to everybody to print money as much as they wanted. It was in real estate. 2004, 2005, 2006. People thought the boom would go on forever, and they were talking about it. Your house is going to just double in value next year. Two things about it. If you think the money's going to go on forever, and you know you'll have money you'll have more money tomorrow. Now, you might be wrong, but you know it. What do they all do? Borrow today. They borrow today. Why should I be content limiting what I do today? Because I'm going to have even more money tomorrow. And so what they use is, they do this every single time. It's amazing how delusional people are. Hey, I want to be rich. It's in my vested interest to think I'll be even richer. Bankers would come in and say, boy, now it's time to borrow more. You can use all this money you have now as a down payment to build that army and crush the Protestants, to build that army and crush the Ottomans, to build that army, to fund an army to crush the French. And that's what they do. Money today encourages people to borrow. What happened? The easy gold and silver that they're getting in the 1520s dried up in the 1540s. Oh, there's still gold and silver, but it dried up. And what happened? Couldn't pay back the debt. They're still bringing in gold and silver, but not enough. This happens every time. In 2007, in the United States, they did that. They thought housing values would go up and go up and go up. It's called a bubble. And the value just went up. And people are saying, they're just getting rich and rich. Borrow off the value of your house because it's going to get rich. Buy a bigger house. Or all these things called credit default swaps and securitized bonds. Oh, you have no idea how complex the financial system is. And then it crashed. And people lost not that much, about $15 trillion of money they thought they had. Actually, some estimates have it as much as $50 trillion. You want to know why we had the worst economic crash in history? Or worst economic crash in history since the Great Depression? That's what happened here. And so you think, well, we should have learned. No one ever learns. Ever. They always think the boom will go on forever. And because of that, they borrow more. And that's what Charles did. And Charles broke the bank. It didn't work. He's scrambling all over. The debts mount up, and they can't keep up. And so, during this fight, actually Luther would die during this, the Protestants did not lose. The Lutherans are basically there to stay. And trying to get my mouse on the screen. And what would turn into 1555, eventually Charles had no choice but to do the Peace of Augsburg. And by the way, what do we call that when I relate something in the past to something in the future? That's synthesis. And I'll tell you something. Most of you are nearing the point where you're going to be the smartest you'll ever be. You're very close to that. Casey, you're even closer. Next few years, that's it. You're going to be as smart as you ever will be. The ability to absorb stuff and think things, and then it goes downhill. For some people, really fast. And here's the thing. If you don't really learn how to do these things when you're at your peak, you can't learn it again. It's on. And so one of the things that, and I'm pretty lucky because I was kind of forced to do this, I learned how to make connections. And so then I learned stuff today. I can't think as well as you can, but I know more than you know. And I know how to put it together. That's how I remember things. It's by the skills I got when I was your age. And if you don't learn that, think about it. Think about things connect. You won't have it. You won't have it. And so I looked at what happened in 2006, 2007, and I knew how people thought. I could compare it to the Great Depression. And I remember reading people were saying, well, God, this is going to boom, when most people are saying, it's going to go on forever. It never does. That's why these connections are important. History doesn't necessarily repeat itself because people are different. Times are different. But my favorite saying is history doesn't repeat itself, it echoes. The same stuff happens over and over and over. And most people don't know. You're not going to remember all the details of Charles V of the year. That's not the idea of it. The idea of it is somewhere you get this idea that, wait a second, things happen. These are connected. There's an interconnection in history. And the only way I can predict the future, is to look to the past. And if you don't know the past, you can't predict the future. It's the only way. And certain people have a vested interest for you not to know the past very well. Why?
So you manipulate us?
Exactly. Now I know what you're thinking about would never happen. It happens all the time. They do it all the time with the expectation that if you don't know the past, they can tell you, well, this is the way it's always been, so listen to me. Oh, wait, it wasn't like this. So this is a big deal. Charles V is just a classic example of overextending and going into too much debt, especially debt that had to be paid back in gold. I should add one more thing. We have a great advantage in the United States. Governments need debt to function, so that's something else. But the United States has a huge amount of national debt. You know how much it is? About $18 trillion. It's actually not that much. The economy is bigger than that, so it's not that much. But what do we have to pay back that debt? Charles was in trouble because he had to pay it back in gold. What does the United States have to pay it back in? They have to pay it back in gold. What? Dollars. Who prints dollars? We do. So we just print money. We got a great advantage. We just print dollars. Just print them. Here, take it. They loaned us dollars. We pay them back in dollars. That was gold and something tangible. So, Peace of Augsburg. What the Peace of Augsburg did was, the Peace of Augsburg. The Peace of Augsburg basically ended. What ended it? You didn't like the whole thing about paying back in dollars? What? It's okay. Okay, so the Peace of Augsburg, what the Peace of Augsburg did was, it basically gave a truce between the Lutherans and the Protestants. Princes could decide whether they'll be Lutheran or Protestant. Princes could decide. Now, let's be clear about it. The fallacy, the myth, or the fallacy of Lutherans' idea came out really fast. When Lutherans said, we are a priesthood of believers, and we'll let you decide, no. The princes decided, and if you're in Brandenburg, which is soon to be Prussia, and now we're the capital of Berlin. If you're there, you're Lutheran. You don't have a choice. You're Catholic, you gotta hide. Or for that matter, down here, you're Catholic. And this new religion developed called Calvin. Calvin and Calvinism was not acknowledged in the Peace of Augsburg. We'll talk about that in just a second. But here's the thing. Once they did this, it'll be a permanent religious division in Germany. Permanent. They set up the religious divide. And since it's only temporary, it wasn't planned to be temporary. That is the Peace of Augsburg right here. And it's written in the vernacular, big deal. Ironically, Luther's German, that the Catholics all now are using too. I just find that fascinating. This divide will help delay German unification, the creation of a Germany, until 1871. And it's going to lead, because it didn't resolve the issues, into one of the most horrific wars in history, the 30 Years' War. So that's the Peace of Augsburg. It temporarily put that on, and what happened? Oh, before we jump the gun to Calvin, you have to add this. Charles V realized, I can't do this anymore. Charles V abdicated his throne to his son, Philip II. So everybody write down, Philip II became the new Habsburg emperor of Spain. And he gave up the throne of Austria and gave it to his brother. Charles V realized the Habsburg Empire, Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and New Spain, he also got Portugal too, for a short time by marriage, was too big, too unwieldy, and Spain was funding Austria's war, and they were going into debt. Divided them up. The grand experiment failed. Charles V basically could not fight anymore. His son, by the way, Philip, thought Charles was weak, and I will show those Protestants. How dare my father do this? But while this is happening, because of the success of Luther, another form of Protestant, or another sect of Protestant faith came out called Calvinism. Calvinism. And that is John Calvin. Calvin grew up in Paris, trained as a lawyer, then had a revelation within his teaching. He was greatly influenced. So we have to get this down. Greatly influenced by Luther. Greatly. Luther had a huge effect on him. And who else had a great effect on him was, get down, Erasmus, in Praise of Folly. So Luther is there talking about, Luther is talking about priesthood of believers by faith. Erasmus, his idea was this idea that the corruption of the church, and we must get back to the teaching of Jesus, or something to the effect of that God has the authority, not the church. And this greatly affected Calvin, who looked at the world basically as, if God created individuals, if God created individuals, God did it. God created the universe. God created all. If he has this kind of power, and yes, they would have used he, then why wouldn't God have decided who would go to heaven or not? Why would God leave that up to people if God created everything? It should already be predetermined. Oh, I use that. I just think that's funny. I didn't write this down. I thought I did. And he came up with the process, the idea of predestination. Predestination. God created all. If God is all-knowing, then God's going to know what you're going to do today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. And what that means is, it has been decided right now, when you're born, in fact, at creation, whether or not you go to heaven. It has been predetermined. And so God has decided whether or not you will go to heaven and you will go to hell, and it's done. And so, good works, that's ridiculous. You can't bribe your way to good works. It's already been decided. Faith, hey, faith could also be an attempt to fool them. It's already been decided. So Calvin came up with this very radical idea, and he would write it in a book called The Institutes of the Christian Religion. The Institutes of the Christian Religion. And Calvin wrote this in the vernacular. He wrote it in the vernacular. He wrote it in French. And this would be huge, because not only in this book would he lay down the ideas of predestination, but also he essentially created the French language much like Luther created High German. This became, in a way, the French language. Calvin had great influence, and the French were overwhelmingly in their debt. And to pay Calvin back, they basically gave him a choice. We're going to burn you at the stake or you leave. Because of what he said was blasphemy. And so he fled to Switzerland. He fled to Geneva. The ironic thing is, here's the man in many ways created the modern French language, and we can't have him in France. And so, since good works won't do this, faith won't get you into heaven. What shows you've made it to heaven? What shows about you that you're one of the people going to heaven? Or as he called it, the elect. Are you one of the elect who will go to heaven? How do you know? This is where Calvin gets weird, in a way. And it showed some problems with his thinking. Good works won't get you into heaven. But being good and virtuous shows that you've been elect. You must show that you are elect by being what he called a visible saint. A visible saint. A model Christian. That's how you do it. A model Christian shows everybody that you are elect and you're going to heaven. So, being virtuous, not living to excess, not being, not drinking, not gambling, not taking part in the sins of society, but being one of the elect. And so, how do you know what to do to be a visible saint? Calvin will tell you. Calvin will lay it out. And Calvin made it very clear. This is the way a visible saint must act to show that they are one of the elect. So if you act differently, you are clearly going to hell. And so he wanted to create model Christian societies. Model Christian societies. And what he did is, it was in, what about that? Geneva. In Geneva, Switzerland. Geneva had gone through religious upheaval, a combination of the wars that were going on between Charles and Francis. And Geneva was in a city-state that soon is going to become the Swiss Confederacy. And desperate for some kind of control over the city, they called Calvin in to lead the city. Here is a picture of Calvin coming in as one of the elect. And he established a theocracy. He laid it down very clearly how everybody must act. A theocracy or a Christian state. And so Geneva became the center of the growth of a religion called Calvinism. And we laid out very, very strict rules to prove that this city will be the city of elect. And so, anybody caught drinking would be severely punished. Anybody caught blasphemy, bringing in different religions, Lutheran or Christian, would be burned at the stake in the city square, as an example to everybody. But drinking, gambling, spitting, all those kind of things would get you put in those. You would be pilloried. You hear them called the stocks a lot, but that's what they put you in. And you be made an example of. Christmas, the celebration gone in Geneva. Why? No, they're Christians. If I said not, they're Christians, so it's a sect of Christianity. Christmas was not an important holiday at all for Christians. At all. It's not important at all. In fact, they didn't know. They just made up a date. They took a Roman holiday. What's the important holiday for Christians? It's Easter. Easter's the one that mattered. Heck, Easter is why they had to do a new calendar. Easter is what counts. Easter is what counts. Christmas was a 7 or 12-day drunken mess. That was the Christmas celebration. So you've got to ban Christmas to get rid of that. So you have severe punishments for celebrating Christmas. And I remember being a youth in elementary school. And I think every elementary school, I think they still do this. We did some kind of thing about Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims, even though they weren't called the Pilgrims, they were separatists. But the Pilgrims were Calvinists. And I remember them telling us they did not believe in celebrating Christmas. And it seems so awful. Christmas, obviously it's for very important religious reasons. I wanted those presents. I didn't understand. But I didn't realize that, for a very long time, until I read about Calvin, it had nothing to do with it. But we know it's Christmas today because that didn't exist. It was just a big drunken brawl. 7 days of drinking. So no Christmas. The first police force in the United States would be created in 1820 to stop Christmas. Christmas, as we know it, would come out of the Industrial Revolution. Sell stuff. It wasn't a religious holiday. That's why I always find it fascinating when people say, I'm going to get back to the traditional Christmas. A 12-day drunk. All right, that's what you want. Easter is the holiday that matters. Any volunteers to be pillarized? Is it pillory? So just arbitrary people have decided aren't elect. Now, this is a lot of contradiction because if it's already been decided whether or not you will go to heaven or hell, then how can it doesn't matter if you become a model citizen. It really doesn't matter. But he said it does matter because I know. So what did Geneva do? They kicked him out. They ran him out of town, literally on a rail, a big long pole. I mean, they really did not like him. And then what happened? Geneva, immediately, it was a big, just drunken brawl, and gambling, and all this stuff happened. And so they called him back. Please come back. And Geneva became the model for a very fundamental, strict Christianity called Calvinism. And that is the Calvinist faith. Now, you might be wondering, why would anybody want this? Why would you want such strict restrictions on everything you do in your life? Well, there's a couple reasons why. And it spread like wildfire. First one, if you're going to be a model citizen, you must do like what Luther said. You got to read the Bible. You have to read the Bible. No, wait a second. How can you read the Bible if you can't read? Education. Education became paramount in the Calvinist faith. The spread of knowledge, education. And so that was one of the reasons why Calvinism had this allure. This idea that you will decide this. You will read, you will learn, and we must give it to everybody. There's another reason. If it's already been decided at day one whether or not you go to heaven or hell, how can you act? Don't worry about what he created here. But when it's spread, who tells you what to do? If it's already been decided, and the Catholic Church says, no, you must do these 5 things, or the Lutheran says, you must show a very open acknowledgement of your faith. What can you say? What's that? Yeah, go away. I don't need to listen to you. It's already been decided. And I'm one of the elect. So you go to hell. I'm going to heaven. It gives you a bit of free will. And this concept of free will, as we take it, was just foreign to everybody. I do what I want. Free will. Because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to hell. How do I know? I know. So it gives you a little bit of free will. And lastly, one of the big things about Calvinism, one of the big things was, if you're going to be a model Christian, you must show that you are a hard worker, a work ethic. You work hard, you sacrifice for work, you show up on time, you're not drunk. All of these things, in fact, we must add this. Work ethic, temperance. Temperance means no drinking. And punctuality. What's punctuality? Something that we teach you from day one when you go to school. That's how you have to act. This is going to become known as the Puritan work ethic in the United States. Puritans were Calvinists in England. You also see it called the Protestant work ethic. To show that you are a model Christian, you work hard. Now, on the surface, okay, you work hard, whatever. Wait, if you're a model Christian and you work hard and you show effort and you show industry and you get rich, what does that prove? And I'm elect. I'm elect. This encourages, this became the religion of the new merchant class. Because this encouraged industry. I work hard and come up with a new way to produce things, I'm elect. And also, it gives them an out. What if somebody is poor and living on the streets? What does that say? They're what? Going to hell. So I don't need to help them. I can save money. I can say, tut, tut. You just don't work hard enough. Therefore, you're not elect. It gave them an out. And this spread all throughout Europe. This spread into the Holy Roman Empire, and the big one it spread to was the Netherlands. And then from the Netherlands, it spread into England. Calvinism would become a very dominant faith. Very dominant. Very dominant. We'll go through just a little bit more tomorrow. But two things. I got to hand out something to you. Oops. Best laid plans of my Savior. All right, what I gave you here is what I've given you here is a form on how my basic rules to do an essay.
And these rules, I basically took stuff that through years of work, but also stuff that will help you with the AP exam. But I think they're good essay tips. They're not really any different than what you've done in other classes. But there's one thing you have to remember for this. When you write an essay in my class, it is a test. I'm not grading out you on your creative writing. I'm not grading you on how you can spin a yarn or tell stories, or for that matter, tell me your opinion. No, I'm grading it on your ability to understand the question, answer it with good historical arguments and analysis, related to different areas, related to what you're talking about. I repeat, these are tests. It's not just a free-form writing. Write in your journal. I gave you an extra one. And so, the basic elements of it are not a lot different. And I will talk about this more tomorrow. Now, my expectation is you're going to look at this. And, for Thursday, you got to be through page 386. I signed that yesterday. And then, the big thing is, though, two things. First off, if you see right here, it says writing your thesis statement. Now, thesis statement, it is basically almost in a way kind of an outline of your essay. You're telling the person reading it what you're going to put in that essay. You establish this very clear and a very precise way what you're going to write. It also tells you what you're going to write. You have to have that thesis statement. Now, I put the little formula I stole from somebody. More than anything else is just giving it the terminology. And so I want you to look at it yourself, and I'll go through it tomorrow. But please turn this over. On the back is the guidelines that the College Board uses to grade essays. Don't leave yet. And if you look at this, having a clear thesis is 1 point. Having a clear thesis and using evidence is 1 or 2 points. They grade essays on a 6-point scale. So that is a significant amount of your essay. It's just the thesis statement. And so we will talk more about this tomorrow. Oh! Some people did not get me their out of 10. Some people did not give me their Luther documents. It's out of 10. Once we got 9 or 10. If you didn't give me it, I'm sorry. I don't think I got yours. Did you not bother to bring it in today? Give it to me tomorrow for class. Kayla. Marie. There we go. Emily. And tomorrow I'll give you yours. Sarah. Jay. You need to skip out? Trace. Tracy. Travis. The big thing I need something about Luther. That was Clarice. And tomorrow, I'll give you